Okay, so I cut out this section. Well, it's definitely going to take a bit more bending and maneuvering, but she's pretty close.
Alright, we got the rocker panels all prepped and cut to fit. So the black on them is a rust-resistant sealer. And then the reason we left the tape is you take the tape off, and then that's where we put our weld-through primer to attach them, because it won't really weld well through the paint. So all the perimeters are done with tape, and then we just blast on the weld-through, and it doesn't matter if the weld-through gets onto the black, it's fine. So yeah, we got some more inner reconstruction done. So we got this wheel well all handcrafted. Pretty sweet, looks nice. And we got the inside of it seam sealed because you can't do that after. We got the drop down piece welded in for the rockers, the rear, which is usually very decayed. And then again, we got the same sealer all the way along the inner rocker. So this rocker is ready to weld on. This quarter panel patch is almost ready to weld on. I think we got a little void to fill here, but coming along nonetheless. And then on the other side, it's wasn't as rusty in the quarter. So we got that section. This part here, we actually, you can see it's blue. So we cut this out of another car and welded it to this car. So that's, you know, the bumper hanger. But looks good. So again, we'll seam seal all that. You always primer first or seal first before getting your seam sealer on. So again, this is weld through primer here because our panels overlap because we put these little steps into to make it easier to weld. And then again, for this rocker, we still got to cut out this decay here. So we haven't bothered sealing this guy because once we get the metal in here, then we will seal this one up, and then this panel is good to go on as well. Alrighty, so here is a roughed first pass. So it's always best to try and keep them low profile so it gives you less to grind. You'll usually always have to do little weld touch-ups, like see that little perforation, but it's got like a spike around it, so I can't really get in there. And then I've banged up my panel to match the existing lip curvature, and then I got a weld inside there, so I've added that piece of metal on the inside, and then again that all gets, you know, ground down, seam sealed. Very tedious stuff. So after you get it all ground down, all the holes filled, then it's your Bondo. So you can see the lip there that we made to weld to, which makes, you know, your final work much easier by having it sunk in rather than raised, because then you'll just keep grinding your weld off and you'll end up with a panel that doesn't really stay attached. Alrighty, so there's a once over with the die grinder and a sanding disc. So you can see it's, you know, smoothed out quite a bit. Something like that little pinner there. We'll get another little tack. For the most part, the rest is all solid. This seam down there I'll have to do with the angle grinder, and then maybe some by hand. Then yeah, once you get this all smoothed out and uniform, like it still needs a little bit more going over, then you are essentially ready for body filler. It's always best to seal the bare metal up before body filler, because welds are always the most likely to rust. That's why we use the weld through primer to try and combat that the best we can. And then when we're done too, we spray paint from inside the quarter panel, and then we also spray it with oil so that you know, definitely prolongs the life. Okay, so we got our lip all tuned up. So I started to bend it in with the vice grips, and then some hammer taps. The Subie saver panels, you can see, are a little longer inward than the factory one, unless this has been cut. But you know, most of these dudes are low riders, so you don't want to leave that sticking in or it will be slicing some tires. So next step for this bit is clean it up a bit more, and then I can seam seal all these joints and in that lip and stuff, and it will keep moisture and water out. So then I'm back on to, now I'm going to angle grind this bit. Alright, so there we are, ground down a bit. So next thing you'd want to do before going much further is test fit your rear bumper to make sure you know, that's in far enough, because you don't want it pushing on it and sending your bumper outward. And yeah.
There we are. I've started welding the rocker panel in. Got a few tacks kind of going all the way around it to hold it in place. And now I'm gonna start on one end, do a few tacks there, then kind of keep going back and forth. So basically I keep welding closer and closer together, slowly filling all the little gaps between each weld. It's really hard to even try to run a bead on sheet metal like this, because you will just burn a hole right through. If you look closely, you'll see a couple spots where it started to burn through, like that weld in the middle. There's the light. But yeah, just taking my time. Well, with everything all welded up, now it's time to grind the welds down and make everything look nice and smooth. Basically that's the goal. Where you see a few little pinholes, those are going to be tacked up after and then ground down again. But yeah, now time to make all of the welds look like that. Okay, well, I've had enough grinding for a little bit, so I'm going to take a break before finishing it, because the sound of the grinder is driving me crazy. But I will start on welding the quarter panel bit back on. Got it clamped roughly in place. Start by doing some tacks to hold it steady, and yeah, go around basically doing the same thing that I did with the rocker panels. here up along the top, I'm gonna have to go really spaced out, let it cool down, because the bigger flat surface you have, the bigger chance there is that you're gonna warp it from heat. Okay, there we go. Just a few tacks across the panel to kind of hold it all in place. And yeah, now I can start welding her up.
Alrighty, so I got my inner rocker all painted. That helps, you know, curve the rust action. And then we painted all the pinch weld too, because the way we usually do these, which turns out quite nice, is see how the rocker lip goes just beyond the pinch weld? So we'll bang it up and then we'll weld a bead all the way along there. It gives it a nice seal and we'll flood it with oil. So I got the weld through primer on all the spots I'm gonna weld. Same with my rocker panel. I've got some holes drilled for the spot welds. Alrighty, so we are welded. Definitely take your time with welding thin sheet metal. It doesn't take much to burn a nice hole. You definitely can't do a bead. Any of these bigger globs is where I did get a hole. It's definitely some precision work. You really got to just get a good rhythm and try and get a nice line with a lot of weld bursts to get them together. But yeah, not too bad. I didn't have, you know, too many holes to deal with as I went. We got a rocker. So you can see some of my other inner patch coming down there. So I still probably have some tuning to do here and then make a filler there. And then underside, I've cut out most of the rot there. So again, I'll be making a, you know, custom filler there and weld it all in. On to the next step of the rocker replacement. So what we do is, this side's, you know, already welded, but next we'll grind these down, do a primer, and then tie in the rocker guard with the floor. But here's kind of where we start. So there's his original pinch weld, and see how the rocker hangs down a bit lower. So you can see how we've started to hammer it inward, and what we do is we end up folding it right around, and then we tack it all the way along. We prime it, then we seam seal it, and that ends up giving you, rather than 3 layers of pinch weld, it gives you essentially 4, and becomes quite sturdy. So there it is, all folded up. And we still gotta tune up these little welds and stuff, but again, these little patches for the inner rocker are just made, you know, starting with cardboard to get the shape, and then we transfer them to metal and weld them in. So I had to do a little patch in there too. I still haven't cut out the rust behind it. Patch ready to go. So there's a sample of a little section that's been folded up with the galvanized weld through primer between both layers there. And then, you know, once you get one spot locked in, then you can, you know, undo your vice grips and move along, keep pushing it all up. Alright, so now we've ground down all the little spot welds on our rocker pinch here, and now I'm going to prime it all, and then it's ready for seam seal, and then it gets a rocker guard after that. And then off camera we got that guy welded in too there, so again it will get ground down, primer, seam seal, and then rocker guard. Alright, so there's the primer on. It's already starting to look good. Just drying up. And then yeah, next step would be that seam with some seam sealer, and then rocker guard over top to combat the elements. Alrighty, so we got our seam sealer on here. It's never really fun to apply this stuff. It's pretty messy. So definitely wear gloves. You can use a small Bondo spreader to get it out, or you can use your glove fingertip, but it gets pretty messy after a while. But that is the finished product on the pinch weld. So then you got to let this dry, and then we go over it with rocker guard, and it ties it in with the rest of the floor. That's it. Alrighty, so we are nearing the final stretch. The car is ready for body filler and paint at this point. So the inner wheel wells have been all primed, seam sealed, and rocker guarded. I've got that section all done. So I've got all the holes for the skirts drilled, looking nice. So below the body line on the outer rocker, I did a paintable rocker guard. So what I do first is scuff it down with a really rough sandpaper so it sticks well. Then a good few coats of primer, and then you can do your rocker guard after that. It is paintable, so it will just get painted with the car anyway, but it kind of makes it a little more durable. Not that this car won't have side skirts on it. The inner rocker, same thing. It's all been primed, seam sealed, and rocker guarded. We even hammered down the dents in the floor here. I got the holes back there for the fenders again. But yeah, it's looking good. And then there's that patch in its finale mode there. So welded in a piece of metal, primed, seam sealed, rocker guarded. All this fender well, at least wherever it was worked on, is all redone as well with rocker guard and seam seal, and then the outer bit. So there's some more of the skirt holes. But car is definitely on its way, so at this point we can just about take it off the hoist and put it on the other side on some stands, and then work on all the other body pieces for it. So stay tuned for part 3 and the final part of this video, which will be the body filler action, sanding, which is super fun, and the paint and assembly.